Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle. We are on digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air on DSTV channel 421 and Go TV channel 144. We are your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. This afternoon, tensions rising in Asaman Kese in the eastern region as two persons sustained gunshot wounds in renewed chieftaincy clashes following forceful takeover of the Asaman Kese Palace. We're live in the town as a police and military team is deployed to prevent reprisal attacks. Meanwhile, in Gomuafeta in the central region, there's heavy security following assassination attempt on the chief there. Also this afternoon, Ghana Health Service steps up nationwide COVID-19 vaccination as 6 more cases of the new Omicron strain is detected in some communities. Meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Ministry places travel bans on 3 countries following the upsurge in Omicron cases in those countries. We have details for you, plus Finance Committee to begin deliberations on the controversial electronic transaction levy, which was laid on the floor of Parliament last night. While the minority has vowed never to allow it to see the light of day, the majority in Parliament say it is optimistic it will surely pass.
And at every level that e-levy is introduced, we will stand united to oppose it because it will inflict hardships on the core poor of the Ghanaian people.
Monday, December 20th, 2021, the major revenue source, the e-levy, is going to be considered by Parliament. I want to believe that Parliament, after the unanimous passage of the appropriation bill, shall rise to the occasion to pass the major revenue source to feed the work program of the government for 2022.
We're live in Parliament with the outcome of that deliberation. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. The Pulse is brought to you by Global Communities, Dignity Low Affordable Safe Sanitation. We are also streaming live on YouTube and all our social media handles at JoyNews on TV. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. My personal handle is @Nana Aisha. Please stay for details. Many thanks for choosing us. 2 persons have allegedly sustained gunshot wounds at Asaman Kese in the eastern region following the installation of Osaberima Etiebisa Kantinka Pobi Asumening, a paramount chief of the town. The installment was characterized by sporadic gunshots amidst resistance from some residents who are believed to be followers of Osaberima Edudako III, another rival chief. While some residents pelted stones at thugs who facilitated security for the ceremony, others fled the tent, saying the gun-wielding thugs before the ceremony forcibly broke into the main palace while threatening lives and property. The presence of a police team, even though brought the volatile situation under control, could not stop the installment process. Osaberima Kantinka Pobi Asumening, in a speech after his installment, said his legitimacy has been endorsed by a Koforidua High Court.
Upon that case, MS Amakase and in the Patiamu. It's as I him by a check. Now, as she sees so, ya, Edia Semono, a farmer for no, or Hema and go for a default. Only form the High Court, say High Court in ruling, a hot home could default. Yen, I call Yen Fenua, I or see wo him, a consistent agreement letters or him being yes Amakase, a Busian Yensia, Nayin Pafoflo, Nancy says Amakase. Almost acquire P, our recently House of Chiefs, a hot home colusia. It's another day, a Busia, a Samaquatia Kwamai, a your this year, I am me or Sabema, a Tia Busa, I think up with Yasmani. Say, me, emehwe esamaman akonya so eyedafo na kese eyasunje da kese emesamaman ene ne mpotemu krata wo ho obi bia we no judgment ni nyina wo ho oba yede be kiro ofori pani fie ene o me yesa direction se yenyi nipa foforo ne esi se samakese he no he no akasa chiche no huti ne ho he no onyo he enti eno ho ene yegina ya high court no so fu aso emenne yede ya amane kese ati se edema abrade adese abusia.
Let's go live and speak to our man on the ground, Edwin Kofi, who has been monitoring the situation for us. Kofi, first of all, I need you to translate what the chief said for our viewers.
Okay. Osabari Mapubi Asumenin said that he's been fighting this issue for some time now, and he decided to use the law court to get redress, and he's successfully done that. So he's saying that he has the backing of the Koforidua High Court that threw away a case against Osaberima Edudaku. Osaberima Edudaku proceeded to the Eastern Regional House of Chiefs. There too he lost, and at the Achim Ebuakwa Palace too he lost there. So his installation today has the backing of the Achim Ebuakwa Traditional Council and the High Court as well.
Now, what's the latest on this incident? Has calm returned to the place?
Okay, there is calm in the area. It isn't like it was in the morning, but there is tension at the same time because we have the police also present, the military as well, and they are all providing security in the town. The security officers, I should say, have taken over the palace, and they wouldn't allow anybody close to where the palace is. So the palace has been cordoned off to prevent anybody from getting access to that place.
We understand some 3 people have been arrested.
Yes, that was in the morning when the ceremony was taking place. So the police officers, after entering the palace, saw some people they suspected to be among the thugs that took over the palace, and they arrested them in our presence. They were 3, and they conducted a search on them, but they couldn't find anything like a weapon or any other thing that is offensive. So what I'm getting, the information I'm getting from the police is that they are in their custody right now. They are going to interrogate them to ensure that if they could find anything incriminating for them to, so that they can prosecute them. But for now, they are in the custody of the police assisting with investigation.
Now, how are the residents taking this?
Well, while some of the residents are against what happened this morning, this dawn, some of them also believe that it is time that the residents also respect the decision of the High Court and the Eastern Regional House of Chiefs as to the fact that they've decided not to allow Osaberima Edudaku to continue to be the chief of the area. So while some are against it, others are also in support of that decision.
Kofi is our man in the Eastern region. We'll bring you updates as and when we get it. But in the Central region, police is on a manhunt for 3 members of an 8-man gang that attempted an assassination on the Gumuafete chief. The police shot 5 of the suspects to death. The suspects were allegedly contracted by some unidentified persons to assassinate the chief last night. But the chief, Nana Aboata, tells JoyNews an informant tipped off the police who laid ambush and shot the suspect.
Why if Nana boy yamwa na bedo maybe Nana boy yamwa bia nyame mfa ne krinsie bepim ina muso nyame waye madum ma betina egwakese no do na moluko onye atipapa na moko do oye de wa bopa de wombokunye ibade na ya sebi yeye bon na nyame no osini nti se nyame we esini hi a ne baadi bi na ye nuan mo wo hwehwe de wa abo paade wo na de obi su nya information no oma apolifu wa sote na me da apolifu so me da wa so papa ina dwumija wo di di ma feteman na nyamenka IGP na ne police fo a sebi warn your man de ma Ghana de da mun krofwe ampanzo woni wo be hia tetete ima etuli kasa na police wo ekum anan another 4 oni hye police wo ejuma wo ye de bua Ghana wo ye de bua feteman na ye opposition funa won sebi adun papa nyi wo tim na de bia wa ye de won ma fete asumdwemban eyi no obi abamu de sana nye nananum no ye de bia no wo twantru de nananum no sana nye nananum no ye sana won na anytime bia no won pede asumdwe be ba fete okay na me da police force pa nyame hwan won kodu won di da mudwuma.
You heard Chief of Gomoa Fete Nana Abo explaining how the assassins tried killing him and thanking the police from rescuing him from the hands of those assassins. Now, let's talk politics and needless. That's how the Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abujinapo describes the NPP's decision to defer the proposed amendments to the party's constitution to its National Council of Elders. In all, about 93 proposed amendments were tabled before the National Executive Committee and they were shortlisted to 38. Key among them were proposals to elect a flag bearer 2 years before the general elections and calls to expand the Electoral College. But after hours of lengthy speeches at the party's annual delegates conference yesterday, delegates decided to allow the party's National Council study the proposed amendments. Their decision will then be debated and adopted at another conference next year. Well, Member of Parliament for Damongo, Samuel Abujinapo, believes the whole exercise questions the relevance of the current constitution of the party. We'll hear from him shortly, but first, here's Nanaya Ojima with a wrap of the NPP's National Delegates Conference.
Out of the 91 motions received by the NPP Constitution Review Committee, over 40 of them were rejected by the committee. But the party's conference moved a motion for the proposals to go back to the consideration stage. Same Awuku is party organizer.
We wanted the National Conference, the National Delegate Conference, to give us the permission to go back to NEC so we can discuss the various proposals with NEC and then move to National Council for National Council to also approve. Then later we can come for ratification. So it's not that it didn't happen, it did, but we moved the motion.
Member of the committee, Dindyong Pemka, explains the committee will fine-tune the proposals received for the party's decision-making body to consider.
So all the 93 and 1 motions you saw actually in the motion paper did not mean that we recommended all of them. But remember, the conference has the highest authority in matters like this. So we brought all of them. We were supposed to read them to conference and the decision was going to be taken. But because of the overwhelming numbers, as I did indicate, conference has mandated us to go back and fine-tune it and present to National Executive Committee and National Council for final and conclusive determination and report back to conference.
So now are you going back to all the 91 or the 54 that went through?
Well, when we get back, our mandate as of now will be actuated by what National Executive Committee and National Council will tell us. Then we will fine-tune it and and subsequently National Council are very high decision-making bodies that have been mandated by conference. And when we do the presentation, whatever is accepted, we'll bring it back to conference for ratification.
Some delegates present at the conference believe the decision taken is necessary to meeting the party's aspiration in cohesion.
The proposal that has been postponed is a good thing that will happen to our party. It will give way for broader consultation, broader engagement. The issues will be ironed out. Those who do not understand some of the nitty-gritty of the proposals, such people will have to be invited to defend why they think such proposals are necessary for the party.
You know, we will have to stand united to be able to break the 8. This calls for unity. Everybody must get involved so that we can actually break the 8.
For JoyNews, Nanaya Ojima, Kumasi.
Listen to the Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abojinapa, who describes the NPP's decision to defer the proposed amendments to the party's National Council of Elders as needless.
How many articles does the NPP Constitution have? Check it out for me. And if you are going to amend 38 provisions of your Constitution, you must as well construct the Constitution all over again.
But does that question the relevance of the current Constitution?
Absolutely. And shouldn't the amendment of 38 provisions of your Constitution lead you to the reconstruction of the Constitution all over again? It means that you are tampering with literally every provision of the Constitution. I mean, for instance, we are being told that we should amend our Constitution to allow us to elect a presidential candidate 2 years when we are in office. In 2014, when we elected President Akufo-Addo for the 2016 elections, we elected him 2 years, 3 months to the general elections.
That is when in opposition.
Yes.
Now the proponent of this proposed amendment is saying that in power, the party should do so 24 months before the general elections.
The Constitution allows us to do so. So you don't have to amend the Constitution. Look at the provision. The provision says at least 1 year. At least 1 year to the elections. The interpretation of it is that you cannot elect the person 11 months, 29 days.
Should the party spend time debating the merits of this proposal? That it should be stated black and white in the Constitution that when in power, as it's been espoused by the sponsor of the amendment, that we should have a flag bearer in place 24 months before the 2024 general elections.
I mean, respectfully, I think it's needless. Respectfully, here I'm speaking as a lawyer. I don't think that you need an amendment of your Constitution to elect your presidential candidate 2 years to the next elections when you are in office. You don't need it.
We'll get a better understanding of what has happened at the NPP delegates conference shortly, and I'll be speaking with a political science lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Dr. Kwesi Amache Boateng. But we'll be going shortly to Parliament because we're hearing that the e-levy has just been passed and the minority is about to address the press. We'll take you there shortly. Ato Forsin is a spokesperson for the minority in Parliament
of Ghana. This afternoon, this morning at 10 o'clock, the Finance Committee held a meeting, and we have just come out from the meeting. At the meeting, we needed to first determine whether we can consider the electronic transfer levy bill before us as on a certificate of urgency or not. At that point, we in the minority argued that it cannot be considered under certificate of urgency for a simple reason that we have received petition from the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunication. In fact, the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications on the 1st of December 2021 wrote a letter to the Right Honourable Speaker, the Parliament of Ghana, Accra, and to the attention of the Honourable Joseph Osei-Wusu, for us to listen to them, first invite them and listen to them. And they believe that they have an alternative way of generating revenue as against what the government seeks to do. And they have actually tabulated the negative impact of this levy to Parliament. We argue that it is important that government or Parliament of Ghana, at the minimum, meet with them and listen to them. The NPP majority in Parliament had said that they do not believe that. Apart from that, we also showed an evidence, being a letter or a press statement that has been released by the E-Commerce Association of Ghana. And we also said that there was the need for us to invite the E-Commerce Association of Ghana for the purposes of them feeding us in as to what they believe will be the negative impact of this bill if it goes through. Again, we also saw last night that the Mobile Money Agent Association of Ghana had issued a public notice that they are going to embark on a demonstration. We felt there was the need, at the minimum, to meet with them and listen to them. Because we in the minority believe that our power is with the people. And we are here representing the people. And for any reason, anytime you are going through legislations, there's the need for you to invite public memorandums. And most important, a particular bill of this nature that everyone is complaining about, there's the need for us to listen to people. The MPP majority decided not to listen to us. We in the NDC, led by myself, invoke our standing orders, Order 211, that calls for a division. So we subjected the decision to a vote. At that point, the NDC 12 members on the committee voted against it, and the MPP 12 members of the committee, without the chairman, voted in favor of the motion that they should carry it on a certificate of urgency. You agree with me that if you look at Order 2115, the chairman of the committee does not have an initial vote, or an original vote, but he only has a casting vote. The chairman decided to exercise his right under the casting vote and voted in favor for us to consider the e-levy and the certificate of urgency. Without understanding the need for us to listen carefully to the people that have issued press releases and others that have submitted memorandum to Parliament. We are sad. We are sad not only because we lost, but we felt that the MPP does not believe in democracy, and if they are determined to do something, they want to push it regardless of the cost. We then decided to sit in and not to boycott the processes. We do not believe that we should boycott it, and we should sit in and, where possible, as much as we can, we get the bill improved or deleted completely. To start with, we propose that we delete the clause 1 of the bill that imposed the tax at 1.75%. We have said that we do not believe that mobile money transactions should be taxed. Our posture is that don't tax Momo. Don't tax Momo. And we've signaled it that we do not believe that mobile money services should be taxed. We believe that mobile money service is only a medium of exchange. And of course, it's a choice. And if your care is not taken and you subject it to tax, since the demand is elastic, it may affect the use of the service, and it will derail all the gains Ghana has made in a cash-light economy. The MPP again did not listen. We voted again using our standing orders, Order 211, and they won using the same approach. First, it was a tie, and second, the chairman decided to exercise his right under Order 2115. So they carried the day again. We sat in and again said that we do not believe that a clause 5 in the second schedule that talks about the fact that they are going to tax what we call the individual bank transfers, which means that if I sit here today and decide to pay my children's school fees, and then probably, instead of going to the bank to pay cash, I decide to sit maybe in Parliament and then transfer it electronically. This insensitive NPP government is telling us that they are going to subject that to another tax of 1.75%. We cannot accept that. This is the first time I'm seeing a tax of this kind. In fact, I have followed tax policy globally for a very long time. I have not seen a tax policy of this kind before, and do not believe that this should be allowed to stand. I want to say that we in the minority will not stop there. We will take the fight to the plenary. We will fight for the ordinary Ghanaian, and we will ensure that e-levy will die today. They can defeat us at the committee, but I strongly believe that when we come to the floor, all the 137 NDC MPs will stand firm with the ordinary Ghanaian in ensuring that e-levy does not see the light of the day. We don't believe in this tax policy. A tax policy that seeks to tax a medium of exchange is a policy that should not be entertained. We have only two types of taxes: either direct tax that seeks to tax income, or indirect tax, which, in other words, you can call it expenditure tax. This is a tax on a medium of exchange, a tax on pensions, a tax on capital, a tax that cannot be allowed to stand. So our position is simple. We will not compromise. We will not accept dialogue. We are going in with a simple position that we are going to vote against it. We will introduce a number of amendments by ensuring that this tax does not see the light of the day. So that is what I can say for now, but I can assure you that we will fight for the ordinary Ghanaian because we do not believe that this tax should be made to survive. Thank you.
Let me just add one last thing, that on the Schedule 2.5, we have not taken a final decision on that because that is the bone of contention now. And that is specific to say that all individuals, your money in your bank accounts, when you transfer it through any other individual or transfer it to any other person, they want to tax 1.75. But even more importantly, the minister did indicate to all of you that he was going to engage us further. He told you when he held a press conference. At the meeting, we asked the minister whether he was ready to reduce this obnoxious tax, at least to even cushion Ghanaians. That is to say, even if you won't listen to the NDC, at least would you listen to the people of Ghana, the mobile operators, mobile money operators, and all those in the industry and reduce it? The minister said that he wanted a certain revenue, and so he would not reduce it. But let me assure the people of Ghana, like the ranking said, the NDC remains resilient, committed, and determined to fight for the ordinary Ghanaian. This is just the beginning. We are poised for the floor and would encourage you to follow what happens at plenary and on the floor. We'll continue to do that. Thank you very much. Do we have to do three? You want us to do three?
Yeah, do the three.
Menuanom, Samunya Namubakaya.
So that was John Jenapo speaking to the media. Earlier was Ato Forsen, who is spokesperson for the Minority on Finance, explaining why the minority will still kick against it at the plenary. So it does appear that it has been approved at the committee level. It is yet the committee will usually present its report to the plenary, and the plenary may have to agree or disagree with the report. Now, Ato Forsen says if they were unable to kick against it at the committee level, it will make sure it kicks against it at the plenary if the report comes to the plenary. We'll be gauging the mood of an economist who will be joining us shortly for us to understand what this actually means if it's finally passed. Now, let's get a better understanding of what this also means. On your screen shortly, you will see that the telecommunication companies and mobile money operators have agreed to reduce their charges on peer-to-peer transactions by 25% amid the possible introduction of the e-levy. And this means that the transaction amount, for instance, if it is 50 cedis, the current charge is 50 pesos. Now, the charges after the 25% decrease will be 38 pesos. If it is 100 cedis, it is 1 Ghana cedis. And then now, after the charge decreased to 25% will be 75 pesos. If it is 200 cedis, now it's now goes to, you would have paid 2 cedis before the reduction. Now that it's been reduced, it's 1.5, 1 cedi 50 pesos. If it's 300 cedis, you were usually going to pay 3 cedis. Now you pay 2 cedi, 25 pesos. And if it's 400, you were supposed to pay 4 cedis, but now you're paying 3 cedis. And if it's 500 cedis, usually you would have paid 5 cedis. Now it's 3 cedis, 80 pesos. So that's the reduction of the peer-to-peer transactions. Let's move to Parliament and speak with my colleague Parker Wilson, who is in Parliament for us. Parker, how did it happen that the minority could not shoot against this at the committee level?
Asha, you know this is a game of numbers, and that the minority at the committee level at the time voted or rejected the e-levy at the committee level. They subjected everything to a vote, and the minority members are 12 on the committee, and so all 12 of the minority members on the committee voted against the e-levy, whilst all the 12 members of the majority caucus voted in favor of the e-levy. And so there was a tie. And if you look at the standing orders, the chairman of the committee doesn't have an original vote, but has a casting vote. And in that case, when there was a tie, the chairman of the committee, Kwaku Kwarteng, was now forced to have a vote on the matter. And of course, because he's an NPP NP and the chairman of the committee, he voted in favor of the bill. So at the end of the day, the NPP had 13 as against 12 of the NDC. So as I said, it's a game of numbers. So 13 is bigger than 12. And that is why they have to agree that it has to be submitted or laid before the House under a certificate of urgency. And this certificate of urgency, Aisha, essentially is to sidestep all the processes where you have to engage others, where you have to consult others before the bill goes through. So we are not going to government is not going to do anything about engagement, rather move straight to the plenary for the report to be submitted, and subsequently, if the minority will approve it, then they approve. Now, talking about the minority, Ato Forsen is the ranking member on the Finance Committee. He has led the fight from his side on the committee. Now, Honourable, it's a simple question. When there was a decision to ensure that at least this goes under a certificate of urgency, was it the view of the minority that the NPP were going to side with you at the committee level?
First, Parker, let me say that it is not about views. It is about the NPP taking a decision that is rational and understanding that they are not just here in Parliament in the name of a political party, but they are here representing the people. We are members of Parliament. In fact, we are here because of the will of the people. And at any point in time, we are under obligation to listen to the people that we represent. A bill has been introduced to the Republic for Parliament to consider. And the bill seeks to impose a tax that is very unpopular. Industry has criticized it. Letter has been written. Petition has been sent to Parliament. Press statements has been issued from multiple choices. It is only fair that we listen to the people that are asking us. That are asking for the people that ask us to be here. That are people whose authority that we are here to represent them. But the NPP won't listen. For them, it's all about politics. For them, it's all about their self-centered gain. But that is sad. I do not believe that is democracy. Democracy is when you listen to the people. That is what Abraham Lincoln meant when he defined democracy. So the NPP have lost it. So I was thinking that the appeal that I led the minority to make to them will get some of them to change their position. But they won't listen because they're only looking at one-sided argument. Revenue.
But that's the whole argument.
You see,
they need money to prosecute government.
You see, you will crash the economy when you are narrow. Your mindset becomes so narrow because you are looking at one thing. If you are taking a decision of this kind, you should look at the economic-wide impact and not revenue focus. Because you end up say that you are looking for revenue, but in the end, revenue may not come. We would have ended up collapsing the economy. That is what the NPP seeks to do today.
Now, for me, it's obvious that you lost at the committee level. Now, the report, as we know, is recommendation by a majority decision. How confident are you that when the report is submitted before the House, your side of the House would eventually emerge victor?
My job as the ranking member of the Finance Committee is obviously to lead the NDC minority into battle at the committee level. My mandate is not a self-mandate, it's a mandate from the NDC minority. The caucus, 137 NDC members, gave me a mandate to prosecute. I've done just that. The mandate is that we will not accept an imposition of tax on mobile money and individual bank transfer. That is the position of the NDC minority. We said, don't tax Momo. Don't tax bank transfer. That is our position.
Yeah, but you've lost at the committee level.
Yes, we may have lost at the committee, but I can assure you that the showdown will happen here on the floor.
The showdown will happen on the floor?
Oh, yes. The showdown will happen on the floor today. I believe that we'll make a superior argument that will turn one or two of the MPP members of Parliament to vote in favor of the NDC.
This is a government policy.
Look, it doesn't matter. A government policy that seeks to collapse the economy is not a policy that should be encouraged. A government policy that imposes additional burden on the ordinary Ghanaian is not something that we should encourage. I have not seen a government policy that seeks to tax pensions, that seeks to tax working capital, that seeks to impose additional burden on the ordinary Ghanaian, and a government policy that tells me that if I'm an individual, I'm transferring my children's school fees, they would tax me for the medium that I'm using. Who taxes a medium of exchange?
So you have Ato Forsen, who's spokesperson for the minority on finance, speaking with my colleague Parker Wilson. He says the minority will challenge this decision at the plenary, but just so you may know, it's been passed at the committee level. We'll wait to see what happens in Parliament when the report of the committee is presented to the whole House. Parker just spoke about the game of numbers. It is obvious that the NPP still has more numbers than the minority. Well, we see how this will pan out in Parliament when the report is presented in Parliament. Now, let's go back to our earlier story on the NPP's delegates conference and the fact that the 38 amendment proposals have been referred to the National Council of the party. And the question is it the National Council that takes the final decision or the delegates conference? The NPP constitution says such important matters are to be taken by a delegates conference. Let's speak with a senior lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Dr. Kwesi Amache-Boateng, who has joined us via Zoom. Thanks so much, Doc, for your time this afternoon. So the 38 proposed amendments, none of them considered, now referred to the National Council of the NPP. Many are those who feel what happened was a waste of resources and everybody's time. Let me first pick your preliminary observations on this.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and let me say good afternoon to your viewers. Actually, one saw this amendment to the committee, those efforts to restructure the constitution of the NPP, if you like, as something that was going to, serve as the highlights of the engagement that occurred in Kumasi, but unfortunately, it took the turn that it took. So you want to relax and watch exactly how this pans out, given the fact that their own constitution establishes the National Delegate Conference as the highest decision-making body. And once you go in to take decisions that have constitutional implications, that is where you want to go. And one is at a loss as to why they decided to come and do the deliberations at the conference, given the time that they knew they were going to spend at the place. And also in the face of 38, proposed amendments. Ordinarily, you would have expected these to have gone through, other channels for them to do whatever deliberations ahead of time, so that eventually, when you bring them out there, you explain them and call for a vote. Given the fact that they weren't going to spend all the time, at the conference. That is what ordinarily you would expect the party to do. It didn't happen that way, and then they came in only to, turn around and say that they were just, sending them to other committees to look at them, and eventually listening to Samia Uku, that they will bring them for ratification on what platform we don't know. So I'll just leave it here for now. That is, making the whole thing much more interesting.
So there are questions about whether that's exactly what the delegates themselves want, and that versus what the NPP constitution stipulates, that such matters of high importance are to be deliberated upon at a national delegates conference. Where then should the balance be stricken?
Well, at this time, it's difficult really to come to terms with, exactly how to go about it in a way as to capture the views of the delegates, and eventually their final decisions on it. But closely related to this is, this issue that is quite a worry, because anytime an any organization at all, or even a state, decides to tamper with their constitution, the way the MPP has been doing, to be the third time the MPP's constitution will be receiving, efforts to restructure it. And that to me is quite worrying, because it gives a clear indication that in the party, you don't have a political settlement. You don't have an understanding, a generalized understanding on what is captured as the rules of the political game. So it's troubling because obviously, and like we know, some of the propositions have to do with how to get people become the leaders of the party. So when they tamper with the constitution this way, it doesn't really speak so well about the politics of the relevant organization, in this particular case, the MPP.
One of the proposals which has generated much controversy is the election of a presidential candidate 24 clear months before the general elections. The delegates themselves are divided over this, but the proponents say it offers the party the opportunity to actually mend cracks they may occur after choosing such presidential candidates. Ideally, what should be the way forward, Dr. Boateng?
Generally, you need some time to really mend, the various cracks, that will obviously come up following, a highly competitive election in any political organization. But one would want to believe that even the current provisions in the Constitution as they are now, has room for such maneuvering. So you don't necessarily, need to go in and affect the current arrangement as they are now in order to achieve an objective, trying to bring peace at the end of a highly competitive election. But even that aspect need not sort of a call for so much time to affect it, because generally every member in the party knows that when you go into an election, you have only one person winning the ultimate position. And this is not the first time the party will be going into an election of this nature. So you don't need so many years to be able to get the losers to come to terms with the reality, provided one, they went into the elections on an understanding that the leadership, the organizers of the election, and not necessarily the organizers of the election, the managers of the party, when they were things in such a way, that showed transparency and that showed that, the contestants operated on a level playing field. If they have this understanding, there shouldn't be any difficulty, with people accepting the fact that the best candidate won, the most popular candidate won. And so they only have to throw their weight behind the person. But when people feel cheated, time might not necessarily heal the wound.
Well, in the event that they cross this bridge of whether to choose a flag bearer within 24 months or to stick with the provisions, which is 12 months before the general elections, what then remains is the headache of choosing who leads the party to victory. For a party such as the NPP, what kind of a leader should it go for if it's indeed intend to break the 8?
What is happening in Ghana today is interesting because Nana himself acknowledges that there are challenges, only that he blames them on COVID. Definitely, COVID has had some havoc on all countries, including Ghana. But there are certain, aspects of the, elements bringing hardship on Ghanaians that could be managed domestically. That I believe strongly Ghana has control over, domestic production of food. And I don't think we need so much external input to be able to, have such control. Various foodstuffs, various staples, rice, corn, maize, other, daily, foodstuffs that people consume. I think Ghana should be able to have control. 4 years in government, should be able to, produce significant outcome. We don't have this on the ground as we speak. So we cannot blame everything on COVID. There have been challenges with the way policies have been implemented. And so the outcomes have not been very appreciative. And some of these have added to the challenges on the ground. So what sort of leader does the party need? Somebody who understands these issues and who will simply go about politics from a pragmatic approach. But then critically, Ghana should be seen to be fighting political corruption. It is when this starts at the very top from the political executive down, bureaucratic executive, and then the rest of society will follow. These are all challenges, that, confronts Ghana generally. So I think the leader should be someone who demonstrates that he or she has what it takes to address these challenges.
I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. He's a senior lecturer at the Political Science Department at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Meanwhile, former President John Mahama has been responding to the President Akufo-Addo, who spoke at the event yesterday, saying that his government has devoted more resources to aggregate the economy industry more than any other government. President John Mahama, former President John Mahama, on his Facebook page today has been responding to that. He says, I think the president must take his responsibility seriously and focus on working to change the circumstances of our people rather than the rabble-rousing skits he serves the nation. To answer his rhetorical question on policy, if only he took a moment in the comfort of his chartered jet to read the People's Manifesto, he would have at least learned about the big push, an accelerated infrastructure plan for Ghana, free primary health care plan, the 1 million jobs plan, Ghana First, framework for industrial revitalization, support and transformation, and several other well thought through and costed policies. I am willing to provide him with an autographed copy of the manifesto. With his speech of yesterday, he has carved his niche as a good campaigner, but unfortunately a poor leader, as Ghanaians have found out at great cost. Let's talk about COVID-19 now. 6 more cases of the new COVID-19 strain Omicron has been detected in some communities in the country. Presidential Advisor on Health, Dr. Anthony Nsiasare, who confirmed this to JoyNews, will not disclose the areas, but said the airport still leads in the detection of more positive cases. Despite the danger associated with the Omicron strain, Dr. Nsiasare tells JoyNews he's hopeful vaccination against the strain will offer significant protection.
You know that Ghana is one of the few countries who have put in measures to limit importation of the virus. We started that one on the September 1st. That has helped us a lot, because we are not different from the other African countries who are having their 4th wave. What the president and each one of us who are at the forefront of the fight is saying that we won't allow ourselves to go into a 4th wave, so it's dangerous. If you continue having waves after waves, then there's a problem. So one, we were doing very well, but we knew that getting to the end of November, the 3rd wave will have started going down. You know, the 3rd wave of one of the most disastrous waves that we have. Yeah. The number of deaths was more than the number of deaths that we had over the 1st and 2nd wave. And then we then said that if at the course of the 2nd wave, we learned a lesson. And the lesson we learned was that we're allowing those who came in for the Christmas festivities, even when they test positive, and the person will tell us, oh, I have a place to isolate. We're allowing them to go home to go and isolate. And I can tell you that, and you will agree with me, that self-isolating yourself at home is one of the most difficult things to do. Yes. Because you should be very disciplined. So we then put in what we call the mandatory isolation, where if you're Ghanaian, you go to our National Isolation Center for free, or if you're a foreigner or a Ghanaian who wants to go to a hotel, you do it at your own cost for the first 3 days. And then you repeat the test, take samples also, economic sequencing. Because when you want to do genomic sequencing, you have to do a PCR. Yeah. That's why we got to know that we have 34 Omicron coming from outside. We continue testing also within the community. And now we've realized that we knew that at least some of them will slip into the community. So the Omicron has come in. The Omicron transmits so fast, and that's why it makes it very dangerous. Because a lot of people will be infected. There are few people who are very vulnerable. So we believe that during this time that we have very few cases in country, we should take advantage, and since we have a lot of vaccines in the country, to vaccinate as many people as possible so that when they are even infected, they will not be sick. One of the most important things about COVID-19 fight is to make sure that you reduce the number of hospitalizations so that you can use the critical care beds for other cases. Because if you put one COVID-19 case in an isolation center or in an intensive care unit, you cannot put any patient there again. So we have to make sure that we don't have so many very sick patients. And God being so good, cases that we have seen even during this Omicron period, who are vaccinated, only about 2% of them are vaccinated. About 98% of them are about unvaccinated people, which means that the vaccinated people, even if they are positive, don't exhibit signs and symptoms, but they can infect.
Okay.
So taking the passengers, testing them, and isolating the positive cases will reduce the number of cases which is being done. Because since the beginning of this month, in fact, from the second week of December, most of the cases that we are seeing for the first week of December and the first week of December are mostly about 60% of them are from the airport.
Okay.
So in the community, there are very few cases. In fact, there are about 10 of the regions for the past 1 month don't have any positive case. So it's a good sign for us. But we have to work hard, increase our vaccination, and then testing at the airport, isolating them, and making sure that they don't go into the community.
You heard there in Siansari, Presidential Advisor on Health. Meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Ministry has placed a travel ban on 3 countries following the upsurge in Omicron cases in those countries. Excerpts of the statement release reads, Government of Ghana has initiated a temporary travel restriction on all travelers arriving from Israel from Monday, December 20, for a period of 14 days, except in exceptional humanitarian cases or during official travels. Permission would have to be obtained from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration in exceptional cases. To this end, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration wishes to state that the general public should take note of the above and adhere to it accordingly. And it reads, the ministry wishes to inform the general public that Government of Ghana has initiated a temporary restriction on all travelers arriving from South Korea from December 20. And to this end, it says the ministry, the public must take note. And there's a third country that it has initiated travel ban on. It's people from Malta with effect from Monday, December 20. Let's speak with Head of Risk Communication and Director of Health Promotions at the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Abuajeda Costa. Thanks so much, Doc, for your patience this afternoon.
Thank you, Aisha.
First, what's the success of or otherwise of the latest batch of measures introduced by the Ghana Health Service some weeks ago?
Thank you. Good afternoon to your viewers. Yes, I mean, since we started the enhancement of our airport protocols, it's working well, and people are complying. The airlines are also complying. People also departing from the country, they are obviously showing their vaccination cards before they go. So I think it is working well. But I think we are picking more positive cases from the airport, as Dr. Nsiansari said. So we all need to be vigilant and careful. And even we should take it on board that when we are obviously we're going on the flight, we'll still be wearing our face mask, be sanitizing as often as possible, and wear where necessary, you minimize talking to each other when you are on board.
Are you kind enough to share more details of the new cases we are picking up?
I think we have a meeting tomorrow at the, we call it Emergency Operations Center meeting, where we will update, obviously, our data, and the Director General will put it out. So I don't want to, obviously, lead him. But I'm just alluding to the fact that, yes, we are picking more cases at the airport, and we will obviously continue to monitor the measures that we have put in place. And should we have to take further action, we will. But at the moment, it is really working well for us.
Well, I'm sure there's been challenges too so far with the compulsory measures, especially you introduced weeks ago. Aside the accusation of you not doing it unlawfully, what else has been the challenge?
Thank you so much. I mean, if you say we are not doing it lawfully, I disagree.
No, that has been, I am not saying it. I'm saying that aside those accusations, yes, what else has been the challenge?
I think because more people are testing positive, obviously, our isolation centers are also being stretched. So even the government isolation center, for example, is full. So we are using other facilities, other hotels that normally we would not have used. We would have only said that if you were Ghanaian, government will accommodate you. But now we have to use other hotels, and the numbers have actually increased. So that's one of the challenges. And also, because more people are testing positive at the airport, I mean, the stress on our staff and the others. So there are challenges, but I think it is effective. So we will continue to work within the best of our capacity.
What new do you seek to do with this new community infections that the government advisor talks about?
Yes, okay. So thank you. I think, like was said by Dr. Nsansari, the first samples we took were from the airport, which we had about 34 of the Omicron. Then the second batch of sampling, which was the community sampling, we had between 6 and 7, but I think it is 7. So what we did was we obviously have to strengthen our community surveillance. Contact tracing actually occurred. So those people who were sitting on the flight and other people, they've been contacted, and contact tracing is obviously ongoing. But there is a next batch of community sampling that Noguchi and Wabik, they are also doing the genomic sequencing. So we will find out how many people do have the Omicron virus. Then at the same time, like as I said, our Director General puts it out. But for us, what we are doing is we are enhancing our protocols both in country and at the airports. But now the most important thing is we want people to be vaccinated, and we are appealing to the Ghanaian population to obviously be vaccinated. In fact, you saw that over the weekend, some of the activities that went on under their own obviously obligation, they said that if you are not vaccinated, you cannot come there. And I think from the feedback that we are picking, it went well. They said some park in Kumasi, Heroes Park. So I think the measures are working. As of now, it is not mandatory in country, but individuals do have the right to restrict people of their when they are coming to their activities. If they have to be vaccinated, they have. The exercise is going on well. This morning, when I checked, we vaccinated about 6.9 million, which is good. And out of this, I mean, if you look at the percentages, I think it's 10% of the population fully vaccinated. That's our 20 million target. And about 25.9% receiving at least a dose of the vaccine. So it's going well.
4 days away, what's your advice to the public as Christmas approaches?
Thank you so much. So I'll tell the general population that our collective behavior as a country will determine whether we will have a surge in January and February. So knowing this, we all have to make sure that anywhere we go, we have our masks on, we wash our hands, we social distance where possible, we make sure that we continue to eat our local food, being it our veggies and our fruits. And we should also be vaccinated this Christmas. Let's take the advantage this Christmas to vaccinate. There are more vaccines available. So if you are looking for a place to be vaccinated, check your nearest health facility. If you go there, and even there is not the center, they will direct you on where to be vaccinated.
Dr. Waji Dacosta, I'm grateful for your time this afternoon. He's Director of Health Promotions at the Ghana Health Service and also Head of Risk Communication for the COVID-19 team. We're still live on The Pulse. We're live on all our social media handles. It's on JoyNews on TV. You can also tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. We'll take a break. When we return, there's more. Welcome back to The Pulse. The Ghana National Association of Private Schools has bemoaned government's failure to rope in private schools in the first ever national standardized test. The test, which was organized just last week for over 470,000 pupils, sought to assess the knowledge, skills, values, as well as attitude of candidates in line with the new pre-tertiary education curriculum. Government says the results of the assessment will help the ministry to develop policies and interventions for basic schools across the country. But the Ghana National Association of Private Schools says government cannot, on the basis of a one-sided assessment, initiate interventions for all basic schools. Simply put, they want in on the national cake. Well, joining me now in the studio, General Secretary of the Ghana National Association of Private Schools, Justice King Itzel, and he's with me in the studio. Good to see you, Justice. Justice, what exactly are your concerns? Because I remember the minister said they were willing to bring in private schools if they are interested.
Okay, the question actually is not if. We should understand that education is important, however we look at it. And there are stages, ages by which you must make certain attainments.
Okay.
If you miss it, there's a gap.
Okay.
Because of the way our neuroscience and brain develops. So 0 to 5, there are things you're supposed to do, to 7. By 12, most of the things must be complete. So anytime you miss that, there's a problem. Now with the school system, like we are doing now, this is an assessment of the learning. So at the end of the period, you want to see what are the children, what do they know, what do they understand, what can they do. We are using that as a basis to do some policy intervention and be able to see how we can improve upon the system. We also need to understand that private sector schools in the basic level are about a third of the numbers. So if you're going to sample, let's say you're going to do, this was supposed to run at various levels, at basic 2, 4, 6, 8, I mean the grade levels, but you're doing for basic 4. We should then include the basic 4 of private sector to understand what is happening both in public and private. So when you're making a decision, representative of what is on the ground. Interestingly enough, before the examination, they are taking data from schools, public and private, leading to this examination. So private schools, children were also expecting that they will be part of the process and preparing, so we can know the outcome of this assessment to help us know how to set new goals and new pathways for the children. We should be able to know their attainment and look at what progress they can make. And so finally we waited. Schools have to wait for 1 more week as the instruction was given that basic 4 should stay on for a week. We did that. Only to be told that private schools are not part of the process. We think that it's not the target should not be against private schools. It's about the children in the schools, the Ghanaian children. And any attempt to discriminate children of private schools, I think will be unfair. It's not going to help the country because we don't know even where the critical masses are. There might be some child, public or private, who will be having that next idea that's going to transform the world. So when you discriminate, these are the things that happen. It affects everybody. NAFs feel that this is very much unfair.
Well, the exams has already been conducted. What do you seek government to do, or what exactly do you want from government?
Okay, so the exam is a process. After examination, the finish marking, and interpret the results. They're supposed to be made transparent. Parents must know what's happening. Educators must know what's happening. The children must know what is happening. Okay. Now the question is, what kind of results are they going to bring out? Will it be results of public schools against what? Because you look at various parameters in trying to analyze some of these things. Gender, boys, girls, how are we doing? Even looking at something like when you're taking the enrollment, are you seeing whether is it a certain age? Maybe by basic 4, for example, you are supposed to have a certain age when you attain that point. Some children get there before, some get after. What has that got to do with that? Public, private, you need to look at all that. So if you are taking private schools out, we think that the kind of outcome, the results that will be given out, might not reflect exactly what is happening in the education sector.
Have you engaged government on this?
We are arranged to meet the minister severally, went to the ministry based on their time, and for meeting, we just go and disappoint us just to talk about some of these things. In fact, it's interesting that it is not the only thing they are trying to do, but if you look at our children post after BEC, going to SSAC, there's another discrimination going on there. What 30% of the 100% placement, 30% is set aside again for only public schools. I don't know where you're getting the idea from. That when you attend private school, it means that you are from a better background. No, it's a decision. It's a kind of, it depends on people's belief. For some parents, they don't have the money, but they will do anything to give their children the best of education. Wherever they find the best, they will go in there. So to assume that being in private schools therefore means that you are better off. I mean, I don't know where the argument is coming from.
But isn't it obvious that people who attend private school are better off?
Our schools are not the international school system. Ghana has very school owners, but basically on the local, we do the national curriculum. Okay. There are schools that are charging as low as 1 cedi a day.
Really?
Yes.
Private schools?
Yes, I'm telling you.
Okay.
I'm telling you. There are schools that are being supported by some NGO to be able to run. The idea actually is that how can we ensure that our children are learning? That's what they are doing. Okay, so based on what they are doing, the sacrifices, we see volunteers coming to help the children to learn, to read, and do other things. If they are doing those and they are getting parents who feel that, I'm getting the results, my child is not able to read, but having gone to so and so school is able to do reading, and so they go to the school, does not therefore mean that the person is well off. I know people who are well off, whose children are in public sector school. It has to do with what your values and beliefs are and what plans you have towards your children. So that notion actually must be discarded. It doesn't reflect the reality.
Well, thankfully, spokesperson of the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwarteng, has joined us via Zoom. I'm grateful for your time, Kwesi Kwarteng.
Hey, Aisha. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. First, I'd like you to share with us the outcome of the standardized test.
Okay, very well. And a very good evening to you once again. Let me say that even though this is a maiden exams, of course, of the national standardized test, let me say that, in the past, we've had such exams, or, similar exams. If you look at the early grade reading assessment, for instance, or the early grade mathematics assessment, which was conducted for our students in class 4 initially. We've had similar exams, just that with what we just did on the 17th of December, is taking that census nature, and we've been able to populate it. And so initially, if you look at the EGRA or the EGMA, for instance, you had the exams being conducted for about just 500 schools. This time around, we are looking at over 15,000 schools, almost 16,000 schools, which translates into over 51,000 students, almost 562,000 students. Of course, the exams was conducted on the 17th of December. Initially, there were some delay in the start, but generally, around 11 a.m., all the exam centers, almost all of them, over the 2,600 exam centers, we had students writing the exams. But of course, we do acknowledge that the delay was a bit of a hitch, but generally the exams were successful. And of course, I'm sure it's the more reason why our friends in the private school are saying that next time we should include them. I mean, if you were...
What went into the selection of schools to participate in this exams?
Yes, so even if you look at the nature of the exams, of course, from the education strategic plan, we are having the exams, of course, scheduled for students in class 2, class 4, and class 6. And then, the initial proposal was to start with the public schools. Of course, if you had listened to the Minister of Education when he met the press, during the announcement of the NST, which is the National Standardized Test, the question was posed to him about whether or not they were going to include the private schools. And of course, we said that the conduct of the examination and the whole process has never been an event. It's a process. And there's a more reason why we do the general plans for class 2, class 4, class 6. But this time around, we thought it wise to begin with the class 4 students. And so even with the government schools, the public schools, we're not even able to more or less start with all of them. But subsequently, there are plans to enroll our friends also from the public school. But generally, let us admit the reality. If we look at researches and studies that has been done by the World Bank, of course, currently and in the past. If you look at even somewhere in 2015, a research that was done on learning proficiency, for instance, the World Bank, made it clear that over 88% of our students cannot read and write or cannot even do numeracy, as compared to if you go to jurisdictions like Europe, which is around 14%. If you look at the data and the statistics from those times in 2015 when we were doing the early grade reading assessment, early grade mathematics assessment, for instance, only 2% of our students could read and write. And that was a learning poverty that really demonstrated a gap. And so in a response to this, the Minister for Education, the Honorable Dr. Yaduchim, is saying that no, we have to conduct an exams of such a nature so that we'll be able to identify the learning gaps based on the data that we generate. Of course, are able to identify the learning gaps and then propose solutions to it or provide an intervention to it. And if you look at it, it's part of the entire long plan of education, which fits into our education strategic plan, which seeks to reform our educations and transform our education ultimately. Of course, in this 21st century, we are looking at training students who are assertive, who are critical thinkers, who are problem solvers.
So are there plans, Kwesi, are there plans to include the private sector or the private schools in the next exams?
Yeah, Aisha, that's why I said that during the presser, a question was posed to that effect. And of course, the minister was saying that, yes, next year, for instance, the private sector will be included. Because that's why I said that even if you look at education strategic plans, which mandates us to conduct these exams, of course, as part of the general steps to transform our education, the National Standardized Test is scheduled to be written by students in class 2, class 4, and class 6. But of course, we began with those in class 4. With the hope subsequently we'll be doing that of class 2 and class 6. So yes, the plan includes our friends in the private
schools. Does that resolve your issue?
Yes, I'm still wondering. Yes, he's trying very hard. Quant is trying very hard to explain government's position. When you talk and say the minister decides, the minister's role actually is to be there to protect other children's rights, not only public children. And so when you say Mr. Decide, the other stakeholders in education, lead them out. Mr. Decide. How do you develop policy and then take key policy stakeholders out and then the decision is just only one-sided? How can you do that?
How do you think the ministry should handle this?
No, we should all come to an understanding as to what we were doing. So that even when they began and in trying to collect data towards this examination, they shouldn't have, at that point in time, asked schools to also provide data. Okay. That's when they cite their mind that, we're part of the whole process.
Okay, so you want to be part of the process.
Of course, we should be part
Mr. Watson, is this something that you are considering?
Let me say that I am not ready for a banter. I speak for the Ministry of Education and I speak the position of the ministry.
What is the position of the ministry on this?
I'm landed. I am not sure the comments as the minister decides and what I view is important here, especially within the context of the conversation that we are having. The reference was in or to a question that was posed there, of which the Minister for Education made it clear that plans are far advanced for our friends from the private institutions to also take the exams, hopefully next year. I'm not sure it's about the minister having the prerogative to make a decision A, B, or C. Of course, if you listen to the premise of my argument, I said everything has been provided in our education strategic plan as part of the reforms. And indeed, genuinely, Aisha, yes, if you want to, I mean, it is not necessarily to suggest that, I mean, students in our private schools probably do not need any form of acceleration. Indeed, even if you come to the private school, public schools, for instance, the data, one of the things that we are going to use the data for is to analyze and see those students that are also performing so that we're able to provide interventions for acceleration. Just like we're able to be providing interventions for students that are not performing well. And so, yes, I mean, even if the private schools, they are seemingly doing well, like you said, they are all Ghanaians. At some point, we may also have to extend our scope and also help them with regards to assessing them.
So it is something that will happen next year. You are including them.
Yes. The whole point about they are being discriminated and the minister, I don't think is relevant within the context of the conversation that we are having. Indeed, even with the public schools, if we look at the implementation plan that was developed by NACA, even though the entire education strategic plan postulates that you have the exams to be conducted for students in class 2, class 4, class 6, the implementation plan actually said that we should begin with students from class 4. Okay. And so I'm sure when we take...
All right, so Kwesi Kwarteng is the spokesperson for the Education Ministry, and he says it's clearly that they will include the private schools. How do you intend to ensure it happens next year?
Yeah, so
briefly for me.
Yes, we as stakeholders, we all have to ensure that anything we're doing, we consider every child, we get everybody involved. And so we'll continue like we are doing. We advocate for private sector students to also be considered. The minister is a minister for all the education sectors and not just for public schools. When we understand that, I think we're going to move forward and make some progress.
Justice King Asel, he's the General Secretary for the Ghana National Association of Private Schools. I'm grateful for your time this afternoon.